Amazing. So, what is some common things or common reasons why a husband and a wife have difficulty getting on the same page financially?
I think the biggest reason is because we start talking about the dollars and cents, the money, the emotional part, and we don't realize that it actually starts way before you start looking at the numbers. For me, when I talk with my clients, I want to talk about your history, your past. How did you grow up? What were some of the terminology, the statements that were made to you as you were, being raised? What did you begin to believe? Because those are fundamental differences that people experience. And when you bring those experiences to your relationship, it's easy for you to not see eye to eye. So, for instance, how that played out in my family, both my husband and I did come from single parent households. However, my husband is very clear. He makes it clear that he came from a poor background, and my mother was living a suburban lifestyle and really trying to keep up with that. And so for us, we clashed because there were things that I was used to, a way of living that I was used to that he was not. And we brought that into our relationship. And so we had to learn how to communicate on the same page because we didn't have the same type of upbringing in the same area. And I think it starts there. I think if people can understand their spouse in a better way and how money has played a role in their life up till now, then that's a great first conversation to have that has nothing to do with your income, your expenses, and all of that. And then you can really begin to see, one, how you're alike, and two, how you're different, and then appreciate both of those.
So, how do we broach that topic without, I don't know, being awkward about it? You know what I mean? Like, what
Yeah.
was your financial upbringing like? Did y'all have
Yeah.
name brand cereal, or did y'all have y'all have the offer? You know, like, how do you? Because it is, I wholeheartedly agree that that is an important conversation because it gives you insight. It gives you the background and some context for why they
Right.
interact with money the way that they do. But how do you recommend that we even broach that topic to begin the conversation?
I think it's just in the everyday things of life. Honestly, it really, for someone who's dating, it's that's the curious aspect of the dating relationship, is that you get to ask questions or you get to share a little bit about, when you're at dinner, you can say things like, I never went to a dinner like this before, this is nice, or um, I like to use cash. Here's why. So it really is somewhat investigative at that point in the dating relationship. Early on in marriages is really about understanding the curiosity of the newness, the newlywed, and how does this play out in terms of on a regular everyday basis. Honey, how do we want to do this? This is how, my parents did it, or this is how my mom or my dad did it, and start to make it just an everyday part of life instead of let's sit down and have this hour-long dissertation about our money past. Make it light and easy. And I think for the person who's really interested in starting the conversation, I think if you begin to share of your own personal life experiences coming up, it disarms the other person and says, okay, so they're sharing, here's my sharing as well. And then you begin to ask some of those questions. But I don't at all recommend that people sit down and say, let's talk money, honey, for like an hour, because that's overwhelming. It's stressful. And people think that, it's going to always be like this. And honestly, nowadays, my kids are teenagers and we talk about things just in passing. Um, you know why you don't need to keep that refrigerator open or keep the lights on? Because it costs this amount of money. And those are the things that make it easy to discuss money items, money topics in the everyday flow of life versus one time, let's sit down and do this, because people will dread that eventually.
Mhm. Now, once you all kind of understood the background, like you said, your husband makes it a point to say, "No, no, I came from a single parent that was a poor
Yeah.
situation," and so
Yeah.
you all, like you said, had different expectations about financial things coming into the marriage. So once you
Mhm.
understood where each other were coming from, how did that help you move forward and craft the plan? Because at that point, you were in the midst of getting your finances together. So how did looking back help you all to move forward?
Well, that's good. That's a good question, because the reason why it's important to note our differences is because my husband really likes to like amass cash. He's like, I want to have all this money because there's a fear that at some point he wouldn't have that because that's how he grew up. And I was used to the feast and famine lifestyle. And because, as a single parent, my mother, was always trying to keep up with the bills because they were big because she lived in the suburbs. And so what we had to do was figure out what's going to work for us in light of that. Sure, we need an emergency fund. Does it have to be that big? Or sure, we want to, using cash is good. How do we keep from the feast and famine lifestyle? And so that is how we started to look at what do we want to do versus only doing what we saw, and then creating a plan that we can both stick together. I think the other thing that couples really need to find some shared goals. And one of the very first things that we did was we looked at we we wanted to see what we wanted for our kids. We wanted to talk about what we wanted for our kids, and we did not want our kids to have the same kind of upbringing that we did. Neither one of us wanted um, the feast and famine lifestyle or the poverty mentality. We did not want to bring that into our households. We were very intentional about getting out of debt was going to help our kids get on a more solid foundation. And so, yes, sometimes, it was difficult to pay that extra amount towards our debt repayment, but our common goal was that at some point we were going to be free of this debt, and we were going to be able to free up cash to be able to do what we wanted for our family, invest for our future, and let them, participate in sports without the worry and concern of what does that mean for our financial picture.